In this video, all students will be able to graph a standard form equation using the intercepts. Okay, we're not going to get it into slope-intercept form today. We're going to use the intercepts to graph our standard form equations. In this video, there's actually a lot of understanding, a lot of idea that is behind the problem. So we're going to actually explain the idea behind the problem before we get into an actual example. So basically it comes down to this. In order to graph a straight line, you need 2 points, any 2 points, and the y-intercept, which is on the y-axis, and the x-intercept, which is on the x-axis, will work. Okay? Now here's what you need to understand about x and y intercepts. Okay, we're going to first talk about the y-intercept. If you have a point that's on the y-axis, any point here, okay, I just picked some random points. They start with a 0. So for instance, this point right here is 0, 4. This point right here is 0, 1. And this point right here is 0, -3. These are just some examples. These are y-intercepts because they're on the y-axis and they all start with a 0, meaning for y-intercepts, x has to be 0. That's how you keep it on the y-axis, as you make the x 0. Okay, so repeat after me. For all y-intercepts, x is 0. For all y-intercepts, x is 0. For all y-intercepts, x is 0. Okay, I'm going to highlight these two so we can remember that. Okay, so for all y-intercepts, x is 0. Now let's talk about some x-intercepts. Okay, x-intercepts are going to be on the x-axis. Here are some random points that I'm picking. And in order to be on the x-axis, that means you start with the number, and then it has to be followed by 0. So what you'll notice is that for all for all x-intercepts, the y has to be 0. You guys see that? So for all x-intercepts, y is 0. So for all x-intercepts, y is 0. For all y-intercepts, x is 0. Remember, we're focusing on x and y intercepts because those are going to be our 2 points for graphing. Let's go ahead and give it a try. So what I did here is I came up with an example, and I'm going to do it the way of yesterday, and I'm going to do it the way of today. So you actually don't need to do anything at first besides pay attention to this video. Yesterday we learned to move the x term, to divide if necessary, and simplify if necessary. So that's what I did down below here. I moved the x term, I divided, and then I got my slope-intercept form equation, which would mean I start here and go down by -1/2. I know the line doesn't look great because it's so small, but you get the idea. Okay, that's what we learned yesterday. Today, our steps are going to be to find the x-intercept, find the y-intercept, and once we have those 2 points, we'll be able to make a line that goes through them. Okay, so let's go ahead and you can watch the example at first and then you can get caught up. Okay, so let's find the x-intercept. Well, a moment ago, I learned that for all x-intercepts, y has to be 0, okay? So I want you to think about that. For all x-intercepts, y has to be 0. So if I put a 0 in there for y, it's kind of hard to write so small, sorry. I put in a 0 for y, remember, because I'm trying to find an x-intercept, which means that y has to be 0. Well, so I have x plus, what's 2 times 0? It's 0, right? It kind of zeroed out. Equals 4. And then I get x equals 4. That is my x-intercept. Okay, that's my x-intercept. So I'm going to put a dot on the x-axis at 4. It's not very accurate. Oops, darn it, I can't get it there. There we go. Okay, so first we find our x-intercept, and then we find our y-intercept. For y-intercepts, you'll remember that x has to be 0. For y-intercepts, x is 0, okay? So that's what you're thinking about. X has to be 0. So if I put in a 0 for x, it kind of zeroes out, right? So I get 2y equals 4, divide by 2's, and y equals, what's 4 divided by 2? 4 divided by 2 is 2. So for this one, now my y-intercept has to be 2. So on the y-axis, I'm going to put a dot at 2. Okay, so what you should notice is that this line is the same exact line as what we would have gotten yesterday. Does everyone see that those two graphs are the same? Okay, the difference though is how we got that answer. We got it by finding the x-intercept and the y-intercept. Please pause this video and get caught up. Okay, for our second example, we have 3x plus 9y equals negative 18. This is actually going to be the last example we do together. I will ask you to try and do a third example on your own in a moment. So, here we go. Example number 2. We're going to graph this by using the x-intercept and the y-intercept. I like to divide up my workspace, kind of like I'm doing here. I'd like to remind myself, okay, for x-intercepts, that means that y has to be 0. And for y-intercepts, x has to be 0. Okay, so I'm going to take this equation right here, and I'm going to rewrite it, but I'm going to put in 0 for y. Okay, something that you may notice is that 9 times 0 is just 0, and it's like it's not even there. Divide by 3's, and you get x equals negative 6. That means that the x-intercept is negative 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. It would be like right out here. I took one step off the graph. Let's now do the y-intercept. Y-intercepts mean that x is 0, so if I plugged 0 in for x, this is what I would get. And what you may notice is 3 times 0 is 0, so it's like it doesn't even exist. Then I just have to divide by the 9's, and I get y equals negative 2. That's the y-intercept. Boom. Oops, maybe more there. So your line looks like this. Go ahead and pause this video, get caught up, and then I'm going to have you do a check for understanding and example number 3. Before doing example number 3, I would like you to complete the check for understanding. This will allow you to know if so far you kind of understand what's going on. Go ahead and pause this video, fill in these blanks, and then check your answers. So here are some answers I put in for the check for understanding. We are graphing an equation using the x and y intercepts. When you use the cover-up method, you are not graphing an equation using the slope. What do we know about all y-intercepts? X is 0. What do we know about all x-intercepts? Y is 0. This method is called the cover-up method. Why do you think it's called that? So for my answer here, I wrote a sentence and I also provided an example. So let's take a look at the example over to the right-hand side first. If you are looking for an x-intercept of this equation, you would put in 0 for x, because all y-intercepts have an x of 0. Well, what you may notice is 3 times 0 is just 0. So it zeroes out, and basically you could have just covered it up from the very beginning. You'll notice here it says 2y equals 12, 2y equals 12, 2y equals 12. So for the y-intercept, since x is 0, I could have just covered it up. I didn't even have to put in the 0. My sentence is, by placing 0 into the equation, one of the terms turns into 0, so you can basically just cover it up. I'd like you to try example number 3 on your own before you look at the answer, which is to follow this part in the video. So please pause this video and try number 3 before continuing. So here are the answers for example number 3. The x-intercept is 2, The y-intercept is 6. I placed my 2 dots, and that's my line. If you got it correct, awesome. If you didn't, I'd like you to take a look at this last slide and compare it with your work to see where you messed up. Because you're going to go and you're going to do an example like this on your gate check. Thanks, guys!